Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today we're stepping straight into the most brutal part of the 2025 World Cup, and it is the semifinals. This stage of this whole event is very unforgiving, and the fact is that 4 players are still standing, but only 3 of them will be able to make it to the 2026 Candidates Tournament. And that 1 person left, well, that will just be a very painful story. And just think about that for a moment. You have played all the way to the top 4 of the World Cup. This is already a very incredible run. You're only 1 step away from being able to get the ticket to the 2026 candidates. And yet 1 single match could decide whether you move on to the biggest event of the chess world or go home with nothing but heartbreak and a what if that may follow you for years. This is what makes the semifinals so intense, and so much people are attracted to it, are watching it. Everybody is strong, everybody is in a great form, but of course, everyone is also dreaming of the candidates, and yet one of these 4 will be the painful story of this entire tournament. For the 2 Uzbek stars, we have Nurdirbek Yakubayev and Sindarov. This might be a once-in-a-lifetime chance for them to break into the elite circle. And for Wei Yi, it's a shot or a chance at completing his comeback narrative and showing that he belongs at the very top. And for Andrey Esipenko, well, it's the opportunity to show the world that he is not just a genuine contender, but of course also a dangerous, not just a dangerous outsider. The margins here are tiny, so these are the 4 players that I've said who are in the semifinals. A single match and a single mistake, a single moment of hesitation, 1 bad decision in time trouble, and it could decide the whole game, the whole result. Any of these could just be decisive on who reaches the World Cup finals and who gets to qualify for the 2026 Candidates Tournament. And it is even more tense because the losers, they will be pushed into the dreaded 3rd place match, where it is, I think in my opinion, even more tense than the finals, because if you win, you are 3rd place and you get to still go to the candidates. But if you lose, after playing for all that way to the semifinals, you are in 4th place, very unfortunate, and you just go home with nothing. And this just sits, the very last spot of the candidates just sits like a golden lifeline. So the worst part of this whole tournament, no matter how well you play the entire event, you can still end up being the one who doesn't make it. And of course, the games that you have won, still they're very impressive, but at the very end, you need to keep your form, play the best moves that you can in order to really make it to the top 3. So today we're breaking down into this incredible dramatic semifinal lineup and take a closer look at how high the stakes really are. Again, 4 players, only 3 spots. Who's going to rise, who's going to survive, and who will walk away feeling the sting of the most brutal cut in chess. Now, today, let's dive into one of the games that I have chosen that is played in the semifinals, and it is the game between Wei Yi and Andrey Esipenko. Just a very quick introduction of the format. So here in the semifinals, it is just like the quarterfinals and also the other rounds. First, the 2 players, they get to play 2 classical games, and if the score is tied, 1 versus 1, then they'll go into a rapid tiebreak. And if rapid doesn't work, still tied, then they'll go into the blitz, where things are just going really fast. And, well, if that still ends in a draw, then they'll go to the Armageddon, which is really weird to see, but obviously it's what many of us want to see, because more games, of course, means more drama. Alright, now done with all the talking, now let's dive into the chess games. Wei Yi is with the white pieces. This is round one of the classical games, and Wei Yi starts with e4, and we have the French defense, d5, knight c3, and we have the exchange, well, the Rubinstein in this case, and after takes, bishop d3, c5, bishop e3. This is all theory, and here queen c7 was played, queen e2, a6, and h4. Now here, Wei Yi spent 15 minutes thinking and played this move h4 because, as we can see here by the time usage, Esipenko still has 1 hour 32 minutes on his clock, meaning that he just didn't spend much time and knows all the theory and is still in his comfort zone. So probably here Wei Yi wants to play something unexpected and outside of Esipenko's opening book as well. So here he decided to play this move h4. Obviously this is not the best move or not the most common move here to be played in the position. Moves like short castle and long castle all make sense, but of course h4 is still possible. And here Esipenko plays knight d5, and we have long castle, bishop d7, and here king b1, knight takes e3, and f takes e3. So far here, black has successfully equalized the position because he has the bishop pair in this position, and most of the times the bishop pair is a really good and decisive positional advantage that normally one side would want to have. And here at this point, the advantage that white has is that white is having a much faster development than black does, and also the king is already safe on the queen side. But as for black's king is not castled yet, and still the bishop has not developed. And here after f takes e3, we have this move f6. And this move, when I was watching the live stream where these games were still playing, Esipenko spent a lot of time thinking here, and also the commentators, they said that this move normally for some of us doesn't come to our mind. For example, for those who are really positional players, and you just think that f6, what is this move? How can it be possibly played at this point? Because it damages the pawn structure and also weakens these squares that might be a problem in the future for black's king. And this move just doesn't seem right. But in fact, this is the only move here that equalizes the position for black. Now, the idea of f6 is that it blocks or prevents white's knight from jumping into e5 or g5, and also the most important part is that it controls these dark squares. Because let's say if you play something normal like bishop e7, well, the point is that now there's knight e5, white jumps into the position, and it is not that easy for black to react. You, of course, need to, for example, play, let's say, bishop c6, but now after h5, suddenly white's attack on the king side is extremely fast, and for short castle here just looks so scary for black. And I mean, h6 ideas, rook df1 ideas, all lining up on the king side. This just doesn't seem right for the black pieces. So here, Esipenko spent some time thinking and finally played this really nice and accurate move, f6. And here, Wei Yi, probably this might be something that he is unexpected. He might be more expecting of moves like bishop c6 or just bishop e7 development moves. But here after the move f6, he also spent some minutes thinking and played this move g4, which is very logical because because after all f6, it makes it more effective for white to play g4, g5. But of course, black is not worse at this point, and black played really nice here, long castle. And here Wei Yi plays the move g5, wanting to prove that he has some immediate attack that could change the position. King b8 here is played, rook hf1, bishop c8 back, and here at this point, black is the side who has a slight advantage because, of course, black has the bishop pair, but also it seems that white's pawn structure is not as good as black's pawn structure. After all, even though black has played f6 and the e6 pawn is a little bit weakened, but white cannot attack it. And the e3 pawn and all of these dark square pawns, they just somehow seem way too pushed far up the board and could become a weakness. So here bishop c8 was played, and after g takes f6, g takes f6, opening up the g file, c3 was played. So trying to solidate, or like making the pawn structure in the center more solid. Here Esipenko plays the move rook g8. So far he is having a really comfortable position. So here Wei Yi decides to play knight d2 and attacks the pawn on f6. Here f5 was played, and now let's evaluate this position. So here black is again better. You can also see that by the eval bar. But the real reason for that is now not only does black has a bishop pair, but also black doesn't really have any like obvious weaknesses, especially the pawns. You see, even though black's pawn structure is not ideal, but nor is white's pawn structure, especially this h4 pawn can become a weakness. And it's really hard for white to defend at some point. For black, even though black's pawn structure is not ideal, as I've said, but you just calculate at white's point of view, and you just realize that there's no way that white could really attack any of these pawns. The h7 pawn, queen h5 doesn't really do anything because the queen is really flexible here, defending the pawn on h7. The e6 pawn and the f5 pawn, well, the bishop, these three pieces, well, they somehow like the bishop defends the pawn defends the f5 pawn. So this is also a really nice structure. Black doesn't have any weaknesses at all. And here Wei Yi finally decides to play knight b3, trying to put some pressure on the c5 pawn, maybe getting rid of black's bishop pair. Rook g4 was played, so black is following his idea and going for the weakness that white has. This is the main weakness that white has. And here h5 was played, rook h4 going for this pawn, and here knight takes c5. So basically this is more like simply, just forcing the bishop pair off. Bishop takes c5, d takes c5, queen takes c5, but even if black no longer has the bishop pair, this position, black is still better due to the fact that black has more active pieces, and this is same colored bishop, of course. And as you can see, even though black has all of his pawns on the light squares, and he also has a light square bishop, but again, for white, it's impossible for white to attack any of these pawns. Whereas for the h5 pawn, the e3 pawn, they could all become in trouble in a couple of moves. And another important factor here is that Wei Yi only has 14 minutes left on the clock, whereas for Andrey Esipenko, he still has 40 minutes left. That is a 30-minute time gap or advantage that he has. So really comfortable so far for the black pieces. Rook f4 offering a rook trade here. And of course, Esipenko rejects the trade and plays the move rook h3, attacking the e3 pawn here. Rook d4 offering another rook trade. And here, of course, black again ignores it, because if you trade the rooks at this point, it will just simply improve white's pawn structure and also opens up the e file, making the e6 pawn now becoming a weakness at some point. So that is, of course, unnecessary for black. Rook g8, so gaining control of the open g file. And obviously here black's two rooks are much more active than white's two rooks. But even though we look at this position and we know that black is better, but it's not clear on how to improve or increase the advantage. Sometimes these type of positions, just like we face these type of positions, we know we're better, but we don't know how to improve the position. But most of these times, we just try to create more weaknesses in the opponent's territory, or we just improve this, improve our own pieces placements. So here, e4 was played by white, and f takes e4, queen takes e4. The more pawns that are traded, the easier that it will become for white to hold a draw. So queen e4, queen takes h5, bishop a6. Now this is a brilliant move here played by Wei Yi. Now it might seem just simply crazy, but the fact is that black is now up a pawn, and these two pass pawns, especially the h pawn, if white doesn't do anything, then white will be under a lot of trouble and probably will be in a lot of trouble and probably will lose the game if he doesn't do the right thing. So here, queen h5, and now the reason that bishop a6 works is that, of course, it doesn't work for black to take. Simply now white will be winning after rook b4. Oops, sorry, mouse slip. rook b4, and after, let's say, king goes up, queen c4 or like queen f4, all of these checks work, queen c4, let's say, and now you have to block with the queen, and this is checkmate. So here, bishop a6, a really tricky idea by Wei Yi, and of course for Esipenko, who is a very strong grandmaster, at first sight he just knows that he cannot take on a6. So now Wei Yi wins back the pawn with this really nice tactic, and here Esipenko realizes that he doesn't have enough advantage to win, so here he decides to play the move e5, which I think a better move here would be to trade off the queens and go for an endgame with the move queen f5. I think this is the move that has the most chance for black to go for an endgame, because you'll gain a tempo, and if, let's say, white takes, and after e takes f5, this bishop is still under attack and it needs to go back. But at this point, even though both sides have 3 pawns, but black has these 2 pass pawn on the king side, and for white's pawns are just way too low on the board, so only on the 2nd and 3rd rank, I think black could still create some chances to challenge white. So white still needs to defend really accurately. But here instead, Esipenko played this move, e5, attacks the rook, and now black's king is a little bit weak and opened to all of these files and diagonals, so now black also has to be a little bit careful not to fall for any tactics. And here the move rook d8 was played, so Wei Yi is playing all of these moves really fast, and definitely he already calculated them. Rook d8, because it is like a forced trade of rooks. And here, king a7 was played. Now, this move, king a7, is really tricky because, like, white only has one option here to hold a draw. All of the other moves here are just simply losing for the white pieces. And now, first of all, if you take on c8, nope, you should not do that, because always look out for these diagonals, the queens and the bishops. Queen d1 is mate in 1. And if you play other moves, like if you retreat the bishop back, let's say if you play bishop e2 to attack the queen, well, unfortunately here there's bishop f5, which pins the queen and the king, and you might say, I can take black's queen as well, but don't forget that black takes on e4 with a check, and now you need to move with your king, but then you just lose the bishop on h5. So it might just seem like it's completely losing for the white pieces, but it's not that, it's not that case. In fact, that white has one brilliant move that holds the game and even somehow challenges black. And the move is, Wei Yi played extremely accurate queen a4. This is another brilliant move. This is even more extreme or brilliant than the move bishop a6. And you might say, why can black just take on a6? Well, in fact, in the game, black did take on a6, because if you play other moves like rook h1, for example, the king just comes up to c2 and can safely run away to b3, a3. And black's king, in fact, at this point is even much more weaker than white's king, and black needs to be careful. So sometimes when you're playing these kind of positions, you should control your emotions, because it might seem that black is definitely better before, but suddenly at this point black is no longer better, and even in a dangerous situation, sometimes you should just hold, like, not go for it. You should just evaluate this position once again, and you should accept the fact that you are not better anymore, and you should just like accept a draw. So here Esipenko, after spending some time and thinking, he played this move, b takes a6. Of course, other moves like rook h1 or queen h4 offering a queen trade all lead to draws, but here b takes a6 is the most forceful one. And here Wei Yi once again played this really nice outcome, rook d7. All of the other moves lose, because this is the only available check, and after bishop takes, queen takes, king goes to b6, and at this point a draw was agreed by these two players, because white can just keep on checking black's king, and no matter where the king goes, it will be another check. And you cannot even play king a5 here, because it is winning for white due to the fact that there's queen b4 mate in 1. So the king just needs to have to go back, but then just keep on checking, and this is a draw. So I think I haven't analyzed a game that ends in a draw for quite a while, but this game, it was just so tense, and it's not like any other games which are very calm, just go into an end game, exchange all the pieces, and you have all of the pawns traded off or fixed, and you have just simply no counterplay, and both sides agree to a draw. This game is not like any of those, but in fact that this game, there are a lot of tactics, and one side was better at some point, but then just throws the advantage away, and the other side defends extremely well. This was a draw that is really dramatic and can show us a lot of things. So full of ups and downs, and really nice game. So this was the very first round of the semifinals. And here, so far, this is what is happening. We see that Sunurov is playing against Yakuboev and Esipenko playing against Wei Yi. So far, all of them had played 2 draws. As you can see, 1 versus 1, 1 point, 1 point. And then today, the time I'm recording this video, they will be playing the tie breaks, which is the rapid games, and who will be able to qualify to the finals, and who will be the top 3, who will be the one who just ends in an heartbreak. Well, I guess there's a lot of who's, but yeah, it's unexpected. Everything is unexpected, and you can leave comments down below to share your own opinions. But right now, I hope you guys enjoy my recap of this game as well as this whole video, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!